The question is, how do we accelerate global growth through online channels? Edward, what's your thoughts on this?
So at UKTI, we believe there are three fundamentals to this. The first is that companies understand there's a new exporting model, and it is one grounded in data supplied by e-marketplaces, by social media channels, and lastly by the large search engines around the globe. The second thing is to take that collection of data and understand where audiences are, because where those audiences are will also indicate to you the sort of depth of penetration that you might or might not have in a market. And then the third thing is then to plot a route to market that then serves into that consumer base. And that nowadays must really include an e-marketplace. Not to discount the role of a website or a transactional website, but an e-marketplace can catalyze a brand's presence simply by the size of audience it commands, and importantly the data that it can help a brand use to evolve its market entry after it's made its first steps in there.
So following on from those points, are there any brands out there today that you think are doing a very good job of e-commerce?
So I think there are a couple of countries where there are some very interesting things being done. The first is in China, where I would draw attention to what ASOS has done. ASOS has entered China using both Tmall Global and Tmall China, which is known as Tmall Classic, I think I'm correct in saying. Secondly, it has its own .cn, so it has its own website. Thirdly, it is on L-Shop, and it also has a presence on Baidu. And this approach is very different from what a lot of other brands do, where they tend to just go and have a presence on one e-marketplace platform. They are taking, I think, a much more media-led view for this activity and looking not only to achieve national coverage, but also pick off certain profiles of consumer on Tmall, on their own .cn, and also through L-Shop, which I would suggest is probably a positional decision by them.
Excellent. So what advancements in the industry are you hoping to see in 2015?
I think probably the single biggest advancement would play out in two areas. The first is that within companies, when I'm talking about companies here, I'm talking about brands and retailers first, is that the decision-making process around export is now one which is based around data, but importantly brings together the perspective of the CFO, the export or business development person, the brand director, and the online director. Because nowadays, the online director is almost a de facto decider of how a brand presents itself overseas. And I think crucially, what needs to happen is that all those individuals get around the table together, because brands nowadays are not just the label on the box, but it's also the pay gate that you pay through, it's the shipping company that presents it at the door when it's delivered, and also who manages the returns process. So being a brand online nowadays, I think is a more interesting, perhaps, environment to be working in, but crucially, I think it involves perhaps a wider range of perspectives being drawn together by a management team.
That's very good points. So could you summarise for us why it's so important for UKTI to be at the Expo this year?
It's so important for us because we are a government entity which has a remit to increase global export trade for British companies, and in doing so we have identified the significant opportunity that sits in e-marketplaces around the globe. But what we can't do is stand and just point the way to the opportunity. What we need to do is play a role of enabler and link ourselves into the digital services industry, and then pull that digital services industry forward into the space that we've created around this e-exporting program. And that really builds the combined proposition that we have, which is around opportunity and enablement equals growth.
Edward, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.